Today, we're going to be diving into ASFA's recent report regarding superannuation account balances, which means in today's video, we're going to be talking about how much you should have saved in your super based on the latest data available in order to have a comfortable retirement. Now, based on the report findings, we'll also be diving into how you stack up against other people in your age bracket, talk about some of the key trends that ASFA has seen with regards to super, and then we'll also dive into some strategic levers that you can leverage if you're maybe falling a bit behind super and looking to boost your balance before your retirement. Now, it's a common goal for many Australians to aim for a comfortable retirement without money stress, but how much you'll personally need to retire will vary from person to person based on your own lifestyle choices. Are you someone who plans on a more extravagant retirement by going on multiple international holidays, flying business class, or are you happy to live a more frugal lifestyle and predominantly just travel within Australia? Now, ASFA have crunched the numbers themselves, and the minimum annual cost that they believe is needed for a modest, comfortable retirement is $73,875 as a couple and $52,383 as a single. Now, these figures do assume that you own your own home, car, and also have a part pension. They have also provided a general guideline as to what they've assumed is included in this type of lifestyle. So as an example, this amount includes paying for all of your daily essentials like your housing, bills, groceries, and transport, whilst for travel, they've assumed one domestic trip per year and then only one international trip every 7 years. Now, on a total super balance for this type of lifestyle, ASFA have calculated that you would need $690,000 as a couple or $595,000 for singles. Now, obviously, this is just a guide, and you might look at those figures and think that it's way too low or just way too high. The figures will change based on key factors like your retirement age, life expectancy, investment returns, and more. Okay, so the first group that we'll take a look at is anyone under the age of 25. And so if that's you, it's likely that you've just started working full time for a couple of years now, and you've just started building up your superannuation through your employer. For males, the average superannuation balance is $8,148. The median is $4,198. And then for females, it's roughly in line with those figures as well, with the average balance being $7,328 and the median $3,899. Now, throughout this video, you're going to see me referencing both the averages as well as the medians, because sometimes the average is not a great representation of what's going on in your age group because it's skewed higher by the bigger accounts and the outliers. However, we still want to aim for as close to the average number as possible, because if you just aim for the median numbers of this dataset, that might not actually be enough money to retire off of in the future. Currently, only around 30% of couples and singles reach or exceed ASFA's recommended total super balance for a modest and comfortable retirement, which means that 70% of retirees are having to rely more heavily on the age pension. Now, during this age, there's probably not too much you should be focusing with regards to superannuation. The main focus should be on building up your skills and experience in order to increase your income in later years, as that is probably going to have one of the single biggest impacts to your super, because as your income increases, your employer is also required to contribute more to your super. If you are someone who has worked a few part-time jobs over the years or have recently changed jobs, then make sure you've consolidated all of your super accounts so you're not being charged twice with fees. ASFA found that around 850,000 duplicate accounts are formed each year as a result of 1.6 million people changing jobs, with people being defaulted into a new account. There have been various policy initiatives targeted at reducing the number of people who hold multiple accounts, and overall we've seen a pretty substantial reduction in the number of people with multiple accounts. 76% of the population now just hold a single account, as of 2022, and people with 3 or more super accounts decreased from 11% back in 2019 to now only 5% of the population. Okay, so in the next demographic, let's look at the ages between 25 to 34. And with this age group, we can actually split it up between 25 to 29s and 30s to 34. So for males between 25 to 29, the average is $25,981, whilst the median is $17,243. Whilst for females, it's $23,429 and then $17,258 respectively. Then when we jump to the 30 to 34 age range, for males, the average more than doubles to $56,344, whilst the median jumps up to $41,849. Whilst for females, it's $46,289 and $35,716 respectively. Now, for all of the data that I'll be sharing today, ASFA has been tracking the averages and medians across both genders for a number of years now. And since 2019, the average balance across the board for males has increased by 29.7%, whilst for females, it's increased by 32%. Now, one of the key reasons as to why the average balance has been increasing since 2019 is that since then, we've seen some pretty significant returns in the stock market, and furthermore, nearly everyone would have benefited from receiving both compulsory and voluntary superannuation contributions. The employee super guarantee back in 2019 was 9.5%, but this has been steadily increasing and is now 12% as of this financial year. Now, within this age range, you're probably going to start thinking about some of your bigger life milestones, like getting married and purchasing a house. It's during this time that it might be good to start exploring salary sacrificing into your super, because not only will you be taxed at a lower concessional tax rate of 15% versus your own marginal tax rate, but if you're saving for a house, then you can also take advantage of the First Home Super Saver scheme, which essentially allows you to make personal voluntary contributions into your super fund to help you save for your first home. Furthermore, the earlier you make extra contributions to your super, the more time we have for compound interest to work its magic. If we assume that you were a 34-year-old male with the median super balance of $41,849 and you made a voluntary contribution of just $200 per month for the next 30 years, assuming an interest rate of 8%, by the time you reach 34 years old, you would have a super balance over $755,000, which is well above ASFA's recommended amount. Okay, so moving on to the next demographic between 34 and 44. For males between 35 and 39, the average balance is $95,937 and the median is $74,062. Whilst for females, it's $75,785 and $57,401. When we move up to the ages of 40 to 44, the average balance for males jumps to $139,431, whilst the median is $106,771, and then for females, it's $107,538 and $77,644 for the median. Within this age range, we're definitely seeing balances increasing at a faster rate, as people would have hopefully increased their salaries since first entering the workforce. Another trend that is becoming more noticeable is the difference between male and female balances. As of June of 2021, females held around 43%, which is up from 41% 4 years before that, whilst males held around 57% of the total superannuation assets across Australia. So we are definitely seeing the gap between the male and female balances decreasing. However, it is still quite evident. Now, there are a number of factors as to why females have less superannuation than males on average. One key reason is that females are more likely to take extended time off from work following the birth of their child. However, with increases to parental leave this year, and also superannuation being paid during parental leave by the government. Hopefully this will help reduce the gap further. Another factor is that women are more likely to be employed in sectors where wages tend to be lower on average, or only go back to work part-time after finishing maternity leave. So lower wages on average, time off from work, and then working part-time all compound to deliver lower superannuation balances for women compared to men. Now, if you're a male and your wife is going on maternity leave for an extended period of time, you can potentially look into doing a spouse co-contribution. This is where you essentially top up your wife's superannuation balance, and in return, you can receive a tax deduction. So how this works is that if your spouse earns less than $40,000 per year, then you can contribute up to $3,000 to your spouse's super and claim an 18% tax offset, which means you get up to $540 off your tax bill. Now quickly, something else that's good to contribute to is by subscribing to my free weekly newsletter, where I share personal updates from myself and also personal finance tips on a weekly basis. All right, moving on to the next age demographic of 45 to 54-year-olds. For males between 45 to 49, the average balance jumps to $190,716, whilst the median is now $139,850. Whilst for females, it's $142,037 and $96,575. When we look at the ages of 50 to 54, the average balance for males is $246,955, and the median is $167,002. And then for females, it's $182,167 and $112,943 for the median. Within this demographic, we are really starting to see the differences between the average and median become more apparent, whereas in the earlier years, the median amount is not that far off the average. At this age, you've probably been in the workforce for 20 to 30 years now, so your super has had a lot of time to compound. And if you've been salary sacrificing for a number of years now, this is when we'll start to see the larger balances start to pull away from the median ones. I still think that if you're watching this channel, the viewers here should be aiming to have at least the average, if not more. But if you aren't there yet and want to catch up, potentially try to use some of your carry forward contributions, which allows you to use any unused cap amounts from the previous 5 financial years. If you want to know how much you have available to be used, you can do so within the ATO website. All right, so finally we move on to our last age demographic, and that's between the ages of 55 to 64. So for males between 55 to 59, the average balance is going to be $316,457, whilst the median is $191,263. And for females, it's going to be $236,530 for the average and $130,714 for the median. Between the ages of 60 to 64, the average male balance is now $402,838, whilst the median is $211,996. And then for females, it's $318,203 and $158,806 for the median. At this age, you're pretty much on retirement's doorstep, and let's say you had a wife or a husband and you both had the median balances. This would mean you would have around $390,000 to use in retirement. Remember that the research showed that you need at least $690,000 combined to live a modest, comfortable retirement as a couple. If this was your only source of income, then even if you are extremely frugal, it is likely that you are going to run out of money. In fact, ASFA's research has found that currently the great bulk of retirees totally exhaust their superannuation before they pass away. If you've exhausted your superannuation, at that point you'd have to rely totally on the age pension, which really isn't a lot to work with and really only covers the bare necessities. Whilst I will admit that both the averages and median balances for both females and males look quite low within this age group, it's important to remember that the super guarantee legislation in Australia really only started in July of 1992. So if you're 64 years old today, you only would have been 31 when it was introduced, and at that time, the initial minimum contribution by your employer was only 3%. Compared to if you entered the workforce today, the super guarantee is 12%. It will be interesting to see how the findings of this report change over time, as I definitely think that both the average and median balances across all age demographics will see increases over time. So now that we've seen the numbers as to where you stand against the population, let's talk through some strategic levers other than just contributing more to your superannuation that you can pull to adjust your retirement plan. These levers can help you fine-tune your retirement strategy, whether you're feeling behind and want to close the gap, or you're already on track and want greater confidence. One of the first things that you can adjust is your expected income and lifestyle in retirement. If you're ahead of ASFA's guidelines, consider spending more than the annual amount that ASFA recommends, or plan for higher spending in the first 10 years, then scale back later. This lets you enjoy a more active, fulfilling lifestyle early on when you're healthier and more mobile, boosting your overall retirement quality. If you're behind, be a little bit honest with yourself and revisit your lifestyle expectations. Assess your living costs, hobbies, travels, and healthcare, and reprioritize spending and separate the must-haves from the nice-to-haves to find areas to adjust your budget. The second lever that you can consider is your investment risk, as your investment risk plays a big role in the final super balance that you will end up with. Higher growth portfolios offer higher potential returns, but come with more risk and volatility, whilst conservative options usually deliver lower returns but have less risk as well. In your earlier years, definitely consider choosing a high growth portfolio to aim for higher potential returns, as you still have a long time till you retire, so you can ride out any market fluctuations. And on the flip side, when you're nearing retirement, and if you're ahead, consider moving to a more conservative mix with more in your savings, so that there is more certainty and a greater likelihood that your portfolio won't be too impacted if there were to be a market correction. Hopefully this video has showed you that throughout all the age ranges where you should be at, and hopefully you are ahead of those numbers. I personally always find it a little comforting to know how I'm stacking up against the data, because that way I can make any adjustments I need in order to be above the average. If you found this video useful at all, make sure to hit that like button down below and subscribe so you can see more content like this in the future. And if you're interested in learning about how you can use superannuation to legally pay less tax, then you can check out this video right here. Otherwise, I will either see you guys in that video or a future video on this channel.